All right, thank you everyone over there at Cyberport. My name is Sloan Culper and I'm from Lifespans. We're a startup company that is focused on orthopedic implants for elderly patients. So this is a quite interesting and important area to work on as a Hong Kong-based company, as Hong Kong has the highest concentration of patients with osteoporosis or old age related bone weakening in the world, which is, I guess you could say, a blessing and a curse because it has to do with how long people live here. Our team is a spinoff from the University of Hong Kong. So we are a combination of people like myself who are biomedical engineers. I did my PhD in the orthopedics and traumatology department at Hong Kong U. And while there, met with surgeons who were frustrated with the deficiencies of the current generation of implant technologies for elderly. So those deficiencies, in particular, have to do with the high rates of failure of implants right now. So failure could be thought of in this case as the bone actually breaking again after the surgery. So up to 25% of elderly patients right now suffer from a failure after surgery, and this is a very painful and costly repair that's required and can lead to up to a 50% mortality rate after the surgery. So quite a lot of area for improvement. Now, if you could think of the inside of the bone for an elderly patient is up to 80% weaker than a younger adult. And for implants to be designed for younger adults and for elderly patients the same way really doesn't make any sense. So one of the things we did was to make an implant that would be much softer and less likely to cause breakage and cracking after surgery. Now, we're the first implant company in the world to produce such a device. We call this the soft tip. So this is a product that we have now been moving through regulatory process in USA and Asia to address that issue I discussed. We have a number of other products in our pipeline that address other aspects of elderly bone fracture repair. So suturing, for instance, using threads and needles to literally sew together bones is something that has to be done very frequently in the operating room now, but there is no way to change the tension of the sutures after the surgeon repairs a fracture. So they would normally have to go and actually cut the sutures and do it all over again. So we're producing the first retightenable implant device, again aimed at improving elderly fracture repair. So in terms of the pipeline for our products, we are launching our first products that I highlighted a moment ago in US this year. And that's going through the 510(k) clearance process. For orthopedic devices like what we produce, it makes sense to start in the US first because the regulatory process is a little bit easier. And then we can use clinical data from that to move to China and EU afterwards. In terms of the total addressable market, the total addressable market is quite large, but the issue is not the size, but it is how we would claim a piece of that market. Well, one of the ways in which we're able to do this is our pricing is quite competitive. We're able to achieve very high margins while having a simple manufacturing process that keeps the costs down. So in terms of actually reaching the customers, though, we use a distribution system through specialized distributors in USA and Asia. We already have deals in place for that to roll out our products. And these are proven distributors that focus on startups like ourselves. So we passed a very competitive vetting process to get into that. To produce the designs of our implants, because we are not just trying to make one-offs, but we are producing a system that can allow us to really change how implants are made worldwide. We created the first simulation software to be able to simulate elderly bone accurately. and it's already being used now by Stryker, Johnson & Johnson, and NuVasive as paying customers. So we have so far gotten patents for these granted in US and China. We have raised $2.5 million in private funding so far, $500,000 in non-dilutive government grants. And we are now raising the remaining $6 million of our Series A to fund the market rollout for the products that I have highlighted. So our implant products and our cloud-based software for regulatory testing. I think I've hit my time, and I'd love to hear questions from the audience.
Thank you very much. Yes, time's up. Please, the judges are going to start asking questions.
Great, thanks for the presentation. One of your team members is from Stryker, and I'm just curious, for something like this, what's preventing the large players like Stryker or Medtronic from basically doing an internal program?
Yeah, well, there's nothing that stops them from starting it, except the fact that companies don't always build as much R&D internally as they used to. You know, back in the day, I grew up outside of New York City. AT&T Bell Labs was producing most of the innovations for that company. But these days, a lot of acquisitions are the way in which orthopedics, for instance, just as one industry, actually, that's how they'll innovate. So we have IP in place to prevent copycat. But as far as you could ask yourself, well, why didn't they get into this area first? Well, we had to invest a considerable time and resources to find the solutions in the first place. So we have IP. I'm sure they would have liked to have invent these things themselves, but they don't always.
Got it. And could you also talk about unit economics? So my knowledge probably outdated here, but a first-gen implant, I think it's $2,000 or $3,000 US. Are you going to price at a premium? And do you have any evidence that people would want to switch?
Sure. So especially for the shoulder market, which is what is driving most of our income projections, our revenue projections, the sales price for the shoulder nails is really quite high. And there is no real gold standard in place right now. All of the research that we have, both from the market and from individual consultations with our clinical network, because we've expended quite a bit of time and resources contacting surgeons from the major markets that we are rolling out to get the feedback on this. They've all indicated that the price point that we have for the kind of performance that we can provide, because we'll show them the data as well, is really excellent. And like in the case of our shoulder nail, the first thing they say is there's no device like this at all on the market right now. Like, yes, we would wish to have that. And in fact, we are heavily focused on making sure that the product experience of this device, when we launch it this August at the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, that what we put in their hands is going to be competitive as a product experience to the Stryker and J&J devices. So we've been working with the best OEM in the world to produce those parts.
Gotcha. All right, final two questions. What's your cost of goods sold and anticipated profit margin? And just total nitpick, but why did you do the 510K before CE Mark? Because CE Mark is actually lower bar.
So I'll start with the last question first. So CE Mark used to be lower bar, but there have now been very recent changes in the CE Mark regime that make it quite actually difficult for a smaller company to bring an orthopedic device, at least, to market. So you're absolutely right. I would have agreed with you in 2018, 2019, but the window has unfortunately closed on that previous process. So 510K now is, in other words, the US FDA process is now the go-to for especially a small company to launch an orthopedic product. Then for COGS and things like this, well, so generally profit margin overall, even when you incorporate like a distributor cut of maybe 40% in some cases, the profit margins will usually run around 70%, 80% in orthopedics. And that is where we try to position ourselves at all times to stay healthy, because we're not simply trying to eat up a little bit of market share. We need to create an overall product of our company that will be attractive to in terms of acquisition. So that's how we built the company from the start. Related to that is our patent families are all positioned in such a way where we have either exclusivity or ownership over all of the key technologies so that we can transfer it to an acquiring company in the future. And that's been something we've worked quite collaboratively with the Tech Transfer Office of Hong Kong U, in addition to like getting advice from our advisors in the industry. How can we create something where we'll make a win for an acquiring company and a win for the university and the inventors? So,
Great, thank you.
Sure. I actually wish that CE was like it used to be, but now actually clinical trials will be required for any new product under CE, pretty much for orthopedics.
Actually, hi, this is Chris. Thank you very much for your presentation. Back to that margin question, and
yes.
And also, how are you pricing, or are you selling the simulator? Is that a separate, is that a SaaS model type of thing, or?
Yeah. So can I just talk about the simulator actually, since we didn't address this as much?
Please be brief, we have 1 minute.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just mention for the simulator. Now the simulator, we are essentially pricing against physical testing labs for the tests that are done. So you have companies like SGS and such that do all of these kinds of standard tests. There is no testing facility that is able to do a virtual test to be able to avoid having to prototype for the kinds of turnaround time that you want to have during development of a new product. If you're a J&J or a Stryker, we basically price it against what you would see if you had to do physical testing. So we have some concept of the savings there. But yeah, it's a software as a service, basically cloud-based system where they can upload their implants and be able to get a quick evaluation of whether that implant is likely to run into trouble when they get into manufacturing.
Okay, thank you very much. Time's up. You're going to be moved to another breakout room, and
okay.
We will get ready for the next startup.
Okay, thank you.